Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hi, this is Tammy Patzer, and I'm really happy to introduce you to today's guest, Craig Melby. He helps business owners make more money and safeguard their business through finding the best choices in a facility and negotiating the best lease or purchase terms. He has been helping companies do this for more than 35 years, and he's written books and courses on the subject. He loves helping people and would do this even if he didn't get paid for it. Well, that is a refreshing thing, Craig. Tell me, who do you help?
Well, I typically help business people, many of the smaller business people, because they're the ones that aren't aware of, they don't know what they don't know. Now, some of the bigger companies, they have expertise in this area. They have special people in their company that handle their real estate. And so my typical client is smaller business or medium-sized business. And I help them select the best space, but perhaps more commonly and more importantly, they already know where they want to go, but they don't have a clue about all the flexibility and all the changes they can make to their lease terms, some of which are very important. So I really enjoy educating them on what they could be doing to make their business safer and more flexible.
So what you do then is, say that I'm a small business person and I've found like the ideal location in the mall next to some big box store.
Right.
And I have a lease and it has all of these provisions which probably are in the favor of the big mall complex.
Yes.
So if I came to you and I said, I've got my place, and you would look at this lease and point out the things that are not to my benefit?
Yeah, exactly. And now let me say up front, too, I'm not an attorney, and there is a real important place for attorneys. But most attorneys will tell you that they don't get involved in the business points of a deal. They get involved in the legalese of the deal. And so there's room for both of us. And usually I get involved earlier. I'm faster and less expensive than attorney, and I bring it further along. But there's some major educational items that I do right away. First of all, most or many, I should say, businesses, they call in a for lease sign. They meet the very nice landlord's agent, who's normally smart, honest, attractive, wonderful person, and they negotiate the deal all on their very own. And what you don't realize is that landlord's agent works for the landlord, and their very honesty is what prevents them from giving you, the tenant, the best possible deal. I mean, you can imagine if they said, "Oh, we can do this, we can do that," and blah blah blah. Well, now they're hurting their boss, the landlord. So, and I've been there. I've actually sat at that desk representing a landlord. Had a very nice couple come in. They want to rent space in the shopping center, and so I'm doing my job. Nice, honest, great guy that I am. But I know in the back of my mind, if they asked me for some free rent, I could give it to them. If they wanted me to repaint the place, I could do that. And other incentives too. But they didn't ask, and so I didn't give it to them. And I realized, oh my God, these people really need some help. And even it goes way further than that. They don't even know. Even titans of industry don't really know the difference between a full service lease, a gross lease, a net lease, all kinds of things. They're just lost. And it amazes me that so many of these businesses will get massive amounts of advice on their business plan and their financing and all these other things. And then they completely drop the ball on their lease negotiations. And part of it, of course, is the landlord doesn't want the tenant to be using a tenant rep, because the tenant rep is only going to make the deal worse for the landlord. So they'll say, oh, that they'd rather do it themselves with you. And so anyway, I'm here to educate you. You want to do it yourself? No problem. I will try to bring you up to speed on the things you need to know. And one of the first things is, no matter what the landlord says about, well, this is our standard lease, you need to sign it as is. I've heard that a lot, but I've never seen it happen in my own experience, because every deal's different. And sometimes you got to go and say, hey, well, paragraph number 32, what does that mean? And if this happens, then does that mean this? Well, no, that we didn't mean that. Oh, well, okay, well, let's change it. Let's adjust that. And sometimes the landlord doesn't even realize what that clause could mean, and they're happy to change it at that point and forever after in future leases. It was just, a bad clause that needed to be tightened up. So the point is, you can make changes to your lease, and maybe you can do the very best job you can on the rental rate, maybe not, or incentives, maybe not. But there are so many clauses in there that may not matter, but then again, they may matter a lot in the future. If you need to expand faster than you thought, you need certain clauses in there. Or if you want to sell the business, your assignment clause needs to be better. Or, signing on personal guarantees. Sometimes you don't have to at all if you ask, and many times you can have that expire after a certain amount of time. And there are just so many things that a business owner should be doing to give themselves more flexibility and to protect themselves against unexpected occurrences that could happen.
Yeah, I can imagine all of the unexpecteds. And I think you said the key word, people don't know what they don't know. So most of the time, they don't even know what questions to ask. What are some of the problems that you've seen, common problems, maybe 2 or 3 problems, and they can be real or perceived, that some of your clients may have related to location or negotiations?
Well, of course, those are 2 different subjects, but in order, location. I've seen otherwise smart people pick a B location to save a little bit on rent, or maybe a lot on rent. But I can tell you that my most successful clients are the ones that go for the A locations. They pay the higher rent, but then again, they don't have to spend as much on advertising. And of course, their sales are much higher. So I wouldn't make the common mistake of going to a poor location. Why even go in business if you're not going to do well? And maybe your magic isn't quite as strong as you think it is. I did a pizza deal a long time ago, and he thought he made the best pizza, in the country, and people would seek him out. Well, no, they're not going to. There's the top of mind awareness that comes with visibility, and there's image. How are you going to say you're the number one best and then be in number 2 location? There's a cognitive dissonance there that just doesn't work. So you need to be in a good location. And sometimes, you could be 100 feet away from where you should be. You could be slightly around the corner, or you're on the same street. You're on the wrong side of the street, or you're down half a block. The traffic patterns, at some point, people turn around. I'm talking pedestrians. They've reached the end of where they want to go and they turn around. I see it all the time. So, negotiate harder for the better spaces. Maybe the difference in rent isn't even that much. But even if it is, you're going to do higher sales. And I see it all the time, and I know it's nerve-wracking to pay more than you would want to. And then, of course, if we build in some flexibility into the lease, maybe it's not quite as risky, because you don't need to sign a 10-year lease with a personal guarantee that obligates you to tons of money. You could do a shorter lease with a kick-out clause that would allow you to terminate the lease even before that. And so your ultimate risk could be less. Or you could base your sales on a percentage or rather base your rent on a percentage of sales. Or there's so many things that you could and should do in order to get you into that better location. And now, as far as what are some of the most common problems, I'm amazed, and now we were just talking about retail. It still applies to office. You want to be in a good image. You want to be where the amenities are good, where it's easier to hire and retain quality employees. So that's important too, and it's important for image for your clients too. But now the other thing, the biggest common mistake that people make is they don't allow enough time to do the deal. I used to have people, when I was representing a landlord, they'd come in and go, I need a space next month. My lease expires in 30 days. What do you got? It's like, we can't do anything that fast, I don't think. If the space isn't exactly right for you, then we need to do some build out. To do some build out, we likely need some permits. If we need permits, we need an architect to build it out. And prior to all that, we need to negotiate the deal. And some of these big landlords that own properties all over the country or a state or whatever, they have a committee that meets once a week or once every 2 weeks to discuss all the leases that popped up. And so it just stacks up. And a month is ridiculous unless you can find a space and take it exactly as is, the way you want it. It just doesn't happen that often. So you should leave 6 months to find a space. And then, by the way, that helps you negotiate too, because when you're looking for a new space and you have time, now the landlord knows that you do have time and you can go elsewhere, and it gives you more leverage. And then, by the way, that reminds me of lease renewals. If you're in a space, let's say you had a 5-year lease and it's coming up for renewal and you got a 5-year option, or maybe no renewal. Either way, you don't wait until the last month and say, okay, what are we going to do here? Or I guess I'll stay, whatever. What I do with my clients is 6 months out or longer, we talk to the landlord and say, hey, we're deciding what to do. Maybe we need more space, less space, different space. Things have changed. What are you going to do for us to stay here? So my point is a lease renewal is even a negotiable event. And if you leave yourself enough time, then you can negotiate something good that puts a lot of money in your pocket. And so timing is the biggest issue that people forget about. And there's lots of problems, but that's the number one that we see all the time.
So time is on your side. The more time you give yourself, it actually puts you into a power position when you have more time to either make decisions based on where you're going to be or when you're going to renew. So you put them on notice a lot sooner than 30 to 60
Oh,
days.
yeah, absolutely. And part of our negotiation strategy, which your listeners should pay attention to, is that let's say that it's a lease renewal and we really, really want to stay. Well, we don't have to tell the landlord that it's like paying the least amount of taxes you can. It's okay to arrange your affairs to pay the least amount of taxes. Nothing wrong with that. And so we're not going to fib to the landlord, but the truth is staying is one option. Now, maybe it's the one we really, really want, but it is an option. And so we always tell them, hey, this is an option, staying, hey, and maybe we'd really like to stay under these terms, and give yourself enough time so the landlord gets serious about helping you out. And sometimes here's a true example happened, 4 or 5 months ago. A client, not a client, but a person finds out about me, calls me, says, hey, my lease expires in 2 months. And we're already paying, I think, too much rent. And the landlord wants to really raise my rent even further. What do I do? And it's like, 2 months, this is an ongoing business with all kinds of employees and infrastructure and equipment and everything. To find a space, build it out, move into it, all this within 60 days, the landlord knows you can't do it. And landlords, rightly so, if I was one, I'd do the same. They're used to having increasing rent every year. That's part of their business model. So they want more rent. It's irrelevant at what you're paying, whether it's market or not, they want more. So I looked at the market, and we talked a little bit about strategy in this. And so in this case, I went back to the landlord and I said, "Look, we know that 2 months is not enough time to go elsewhere, but we can and we will move out and work out of everybody will work out of their homes for a while if they have to, unless you want to give us a better deal." Because it's very important to us. The value of the business is based on the income of the business, and the income is based on how much is left over after expenses, right? And rent's an expense. So it really multiplies, and it's a serious thing. And then also, if you're going to sell the business, it could be a massive difference in what kind of income you're making net after rent. So I explained all that. I said, we know it's a royal pain in the rear, but we will do it. It's worth it to us. We'll have to do it unless you want to get serious. And of course, the mere fact that they hired a tenant rep changed everything too, because they had been dealing directly with the tenant. Tenant doesn't know anything. They know that. And then when I showed up, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back too hard there. Maybe you want to edit this out. But anyway, so just me showing up changed their whole attitude. And then I convinced them that we would move if we had to. And wouldn't you know, just as an example now, instead of the rent going up, it went down substantially. And oh, by the way, that air conditioner that's been there for 10 years, it's on its last legs. For us to stay, you need to put in a new one. Oh, and the paint, it's looking a little shabby. You need to paint the interior of our premises too. And so those are all three true things that happened recently that if you're doing it all by yourself and not leaving yourself enough time, you're not going to get any of that.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. It's just like, representing yourself in court. Or representing yourself with the IRS, or, doing things that are not part of your business acumen. It makes sense. Why do you think that most people wouldn't want to be represented by someone like you?
Well, I think that they don't think about it. And of course, there's also the landlord. If you call the landlord right up front, and the landlord may tell you that, oh, well, if you use a broker, I got to pay that broker, so your cost is going to go up. Would be better if we dealt directly. And don't forget, the landlords are very nice people. So it's just easy to do. You'd get lured in to working with this very nice person directly. And you'll never know all the things that you didn't get that you could have, including lease clauses. Some disaster happens and you go, oh, well, that's the way it is. I got this obligation and I have to do this and that other thing. You don't even know how you screwed up. You never will know. So the biggest thing is it's just easy to do it yourself with this very nice person who's kind of convinced you that it'd be better if you did it yourself. Now, and I can tell you, if you come to me first and I call that same exact landlord about the same exact space, and I say, hey, I'm representing a tenant that is thinking of moving into your space. It's one of a few we're looking at, and we could be interested in that. They love me. They roll out the red carpet for me to bring them a tenant. So it changes completely. Same tenant going into the same space. They are happy to work with me because they want that tenant. And by the way the real estate field works, normally the landlord is paying a commission to his agent, which then I share in. So the cost doesn't go up. My clients typically don't pay me anything. So I'm doing all this great work. I'm saving you tons of money, and you don't even pay me anything. It's insane. I think my biggest marketing challenge is that people aren't aware that this service exists. That's the biggest thing.
Wow. Well, I wasn't aware that it existed. So
there you go.
Basically, because you're working, it's kind of like if you were bringing a buyer to a house, that would be like you and the selling agent would split the commission of whatever it
Exactly.
is. So
Right.
this is just a little bit different because instead of bringing a buyer, you're bringing a lessee. And the beauty of it is because you have the more than 35 years of experience and have written books and courses on the subject, it obviously would behoove someone to go, well, gee, shouldn't I have an expert representing me? I mean, I didn't realize how it worked because I personally have not ever had to negotiate for a brick and mortar type situation. But I'm thinking that, for example, if I owned an ice cream store, I certainly wouldn't want a yogurt store to be right next door to me. And that might be something that you could help me negotiate.
Well, yeah, or even that's fairly obvious, and so a tenant may think of that and ask that that be put in the lease. And but yeah, that's right. And it's funny. I got two things I wanted to say, and I hope I don't forget the other one. But just as an example, I had a tenant that did his own deal in a neighboring city. Guy knows me. He forgot about me. Story of my life, So I see him I bump into him literally on the sidewalk, and he goes, "Oh, Craig, geez, I forgot. I'm doing this deal in the city next door, expansion unit. Would you look at my lease before I sign it?" Yeah, sure. I'm thinking maybe he'll remember me next time. So happy to look at it. And I look at it, and I come back to him with 10 items that would be to his benefit if he changed. It happened to be 10 exactly. And so I go over them with him, and he goes, "Geez, you think they do this?" And here's the point of the story. I say, "Well, if you say you'd like these things done, maybe not. But if you say, this is what I need in order for me to be here, then see what happens." So that's what he does. And then it's over. And then I bump into him again 2 months later, and he says, "Oh, you wouldn't believe it, Craig. You wouldn't believe it. I got all 10 things." Well, good for you. And so, that's typical, I'm telling you. And so the other thing I wanted to say was, if you, when I actually, mainly because of this true story, I changed my business model a little bit. In addition to doing the site selection and lease negotiation, where I get paid a commission, which is my favorite thing. Also, there's a lot of companies out there that need some help. I just see that all day, every day. So I said, all right, fine. If you want to pay me to advise you, then fine. I'm at your service. So that's another thing I do. If you've already gone down the path, if you've negotiated your own deal, now you got this big hairy lease in your hands, and all of a sudden you realize, maybe I shouldn't be doing this myself. Well, fine. I will. You email me the lease. We'll get on the phone. I'll give you my advice, and I'll charge you for it. And it's going to be well worth your money. And then you can bring it to your attorney after all the business points are hammered out, and then your attorney can quickly do his job quicker and save you some money there too. But so, and I do this all the time. So I can only tell you, I'm not guessing at the problems that small businesses have. I see it all day, every day, and there's just dozens of clauses that they should have in there. Some of which, we put in just in case. And wow, who knew? A couple of years later, we're really glad that's in there. I look like a hero putting stuff in there that we didn't need at the time.
Wow, that's really interesting because you said the business points. You take care of the business points, and the attorney, of course, takes care of the legal points. And I
Right.
think that's really important. So if somebody wanted to find out more about you and your services, where can they find out more?
Well, the best way is at my website. I have a very clever name called leasesmart.com. It's all one word, leasesmart.com. Or I can leave a phone number if you like too. I don't know.
Sure, that would be great.
Okay, 800-962-2419. And I'll be happy to talk to you. My initial conversations is always no charge. I just like to hear what your situation is, and I'll tell you right up front whether I can help you or not. And maybe it's such a simple little thing. I'll just give you the advice you wanted on that one issue, and off you go. No problem. Remember me for next time, or tell your friends. I don't, like we said earlier, I enjoy this stuff. I do it even if I didn't get paid, but unfortunately, my wife likes me to put food on the table and my kids want shoes,
Yeah, I understand that point. Well, Craig, I really appreciate the time that you took to explain some of the nuances related to leasing, because it definitely is something that I think for the average business person, we have to admit we don't know what we don't know, and we need somebody to help us so that we don't get ourselves into a situation that will put us out of business before we even get started.
Absolutely. And if we had another hour or two, I could go over all those things, or maybe some future podcast we can dig into it.
Well,
But
actually,
you're absolutely.
That's what I was actually thinking. And I'll just take this opportunity to invite you back another time, and we'll dig into some other issues related to smart leasing. So take that as an invitation. And again, Craig, I really appreciate all your time.
Sure. Well, I appreciate being here. Thank you very much.
This is Tammy Patzer. Go make it a great day.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.